Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our event, Unlocking Meridian Water, the next stage for Enfield's £6 billion scheme hosted by NLA. My name is Benjamin O'Connor, and I'm a director at NLA. Very shortly, I'll be handing over to our chair for today, but first, as this is a public event, I'd like to give a quick introduction for those less familiar with what we do. New London Architecture is London's leading independent centre for the built environment. We bring together professionals, politicians, and crucially, members of the public to learn about, debate, and ultimately have a voice on the future shape of London. We do this through a broad programme of events that are now largely online for the foreseeable future anyway, but we have a number of other outputs, including articles and news pieces, interviews, video content, research papers, and a large social network. So please do check out our website, nla.london, for all the latest content. I'd now like to hand you over to the chair for today, and that is Jenna Goldberg, Director at London Communications Agency. Jenna, over to you.
Thanks very much, Ben. Hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome to this webinar. I'm going to shortly hand over to Peter George, who's going to set the scene for us all, but a few points of housekeeping first. We've only got an hour, so we'll be hopefully galloping along at quite a clip, and I'll be managing the Q&A once Peter's set the scene with his presentation. Please do ask questions though, and you can start asking questions as soon as Peter inspires you to in his presentation by using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. And if you'd like to include your name and organisation, that's fantastic. You don't have to, of course. And once Peter's finished, I'll start to ask some of those questions and we can have a great discussion. So as we've only got an hour, I'm going to maximise time and go straight over to Peter.
Okay, thank you, Jenna. Good morning, everyone. Thanks to the NLA for hosting and for LCA for chairing. And thank you for so many of you for joining this morning. So I've got about 30 slides and about 10 minutes. I'm going to go at a bit of a pace. The presentation is here to give you an update on all the progress that we are making to bring forward Meridian Water, as well as giving you a flavour and an indication as to what we're looking to be bringing forward next in terms of housing. So I'm not controlling the presentation, so you'll hear me use the word next a lot of times. So next slide, please. And again, so for those unfamiliar with Meridian Water, it's a 85-hectare site located in the southeast corner of the borough, adjacent to Waltham Forest and Harringay councils. We have, a lot of people know it for the IKEA store in the middle and the A406 on the north. There's also a north-south railway line going into Stratford in 15 minutes and into Liverpool Street. Next slide. So I've been leading the project on behalf of Enfield Council for the last 6 years or so. When I took over the project, we just finished this, the first stage, which was master planning Meridian Water and trying to encourage the private sector to come forward. But they were put off by lack of infrastructure, fragmented land ownership and remediation. Second stage, council as enabler. That was the council buying some land, delivering some rail infrastructure and doing some remediation. But we decided that the best position for the council was the third and final stage, with the council as the master developer, where the council is now coordinating the whole development, responsible for the vision, for strategic planning, for master planning, estate management, strategic infrastructure, and for meanwhile. And we are carving up plots of land for partnerships with developers and various operators to deliver employment and residential. Next slide. So some of the objectives: really strong emphasis on quality of design and placemaking. The site can achieve a minimum of 10,000 homes. So a population of approaching 30,000 people. There's going to be a real mix of facilities, 6,000 jobs. Top priorities are ensuring that the local people of Edmonton are the principal beneficiaries and that we lift those Edmonton wards at the top 10% most deprived. Next slide. We have 3 placemaking pillars which govern all of the master planning work that we do. Park life on your doorstep, bringing the natural benefits of Lee Valley into each and every site. Your place to make and create talks to the type of local economy. Mixing uses, animation street, talks to the fact we want the most active and vibrant of ground floors of any development in London. Next slide. This slide shows how it all comes together over the next 25 years in terms of the master planning vision. Next slide. We are finalising our environmental sustainability strategy. It's incredibly ambitious, which I'm proud to say. These are the 3 crucial elements. And for example, on environmental positive, we're looking to have the total amount of green open space to be at 30% of the development. So wherever you are located in the development, you'll never be more than 2 minutes away from a quality piece of open space. We're also looking, for example, at how we can retain and reuse materials such as the drum sheds that have to be demolished, how we can recycle them across the development. Next slide. In order to deliver a project this scale and complexity, it's a significant multi-stakeholder operation, and this slide just gives a flavour of all the different stakeholders and partners that we're working with. Next slide. One of the most crucial stakeholders, of course, being local people, and we've had to slow down during COVID, sadly, but we're finding new ways in which to engage with local people in the area, but also you can see with the site tours, we have people from across London coming to take a look at Meridian Water. Next slide. And one of the big moves at Meridian Water is the council has, and this has enabled us to fulfill the master developer role, we've gone out and acquired a lot of land. So we bought 37 of about 55 developable hectares at Meridian Water, and we are working on a CPO to acquire some of the balance of the land. The Tesco's and IKEA land in the middle of the site, we do not want to acquire. We want Tesco's and IKEA to stay, which they both intend to do. We also want Tesco's and IKEA to redevelop their land, which they are contemplating. If Tesco's and IKEA come forward for new development, Meridian Water can go from 10,000 homes to somewhere around 12 or 13,000 homes. Next slide. So just moving into kind of talking about infrastructure, employment, and then residential. So on infrastructure, the first big move, next slide please, is the development of the Meridian Water train station, which we've delivered last year on time and on budget. Council invested about £40 million into this station. The GLA has put money into this station as well. We've also worked with multiple stakeholders to deliver a new 3rd track, which takes us from an abysmal half a dozen trains a day to at least a regular half-hourly service. Next slide. It's really important that the quality of the station design, which the council led, so the council got the planning application for this. We managed Network Rail really proactively to deliver this station, and we're really happy with the outcome, and it reflects the ambition and quality of Meridian Water. Next slide. 2 trains an hour is not enough. We're incredibly proud to be the only borough in London to have won money from the Housing Infrastructure Fund government programme, and what an incredible sum of money we've been able to achieve. Part of that money goes into uplifting the rail to 6 to 8 trains an hour. Next slide. And it also delivers the infrastructure backbone. So an east-west spine road, a beautiful new 2-hectare park right in the centre of the development, cycle lanes, flood alleviation, remediation. It simply unlocks the entire potential of Meridian Water, enabling 10,000 homes, 6,000 jobs to be delivered. Next slide. On employment, so 6,000 jobs, next slide, is the long-term ambition. We're starting with making incredible progress on Meanwhile. We would argue that Meridian Water is redefining how Meanwhile can contribute to placemaking and development. We're also doing a lot of work on training, and Matt Taylor can talk about the work that Vistry are doing to deliver a construction skills academy on the site. Next slide. So here's some of our initial employment projects. So we have You know, we're pleased to have Al from Building Blocks on the call. So this project is a Building Blocks, GLA, Enfield Council partnership arrangement. We've now got planning permission, we've got funding, we've got a contractor. This is happening on site this summer, and Building Blocks will be in their beautiful new building next spring. Next slide. Just another slide showing how this will look. Also looking to deliver a Sky Bar cafe as part of this offer. Next slide. We've recently delivered a Meanwhile use, a drive-in cinema, incredibly successful. The opening weekend, it was the highest grossing cinema in the UK. It's not just offering cinema, it's also offering a range of entertainment. We've got Sir Ralph Fiennes coming here. We've got drag acts. We've got theatre actresses singing Spice Girl songs before Spice World. We've got dinosaur shows for children. So it's a fabulous Meanwhile use that is going really well. 2,000 tickets have been given to the NHS workers and care workers for free in the spirit of the COVID moment. We've also got local people and local suppliers as part of the team. Next slide. Another slide just showing how 300 cars fits across the site. Next slide. We've also got the Drum Sheds, the biggest music venue in London with a 10,000 capacity license. Next slide. Tragically, this year, all of that has had to be paused because of COVID, but our partner Vibration Group have got an incredibly exciting program for 2021. Next slide. And finally, we are under discussion to bring film studios into Meridian Water. If we're able to deliver this, it will mean that there will be 6 film studios generating hundreds of jobs, and also a skills academy training up local people to get jobs. 500 local people a year will be trained up to get jobs in the film industry. And in the middle of the 2020s, there will be a 2,000-seater theatre, meaning we'll get 1 million people coming to Meridian Water a year just generated by these film studios and the theatre. Next slide. Finally, on housing delivery, next slide. So in terms of the housing overview, 10,000 homes, a minimum of 60%, a minimum of 40% affordable with aspiration to 50%, a mix of housing tenures and bedroom mix. We are working, which we think is quite pioneering, is on what we call the Edmonton Community Housing Plan. That will ensure that the local people of Edmonton are the first priority in order to fulfill our promise that local people are the principal beneficiaries. The people of Edmonton will get first opportunity to take the London affordable rent homes and all of the affordable homes at Meridian Water before they're offered out further afield in the borough. There will be council homes, there will be specialist housing and a large amount of wheelchair housing. Next slide. This slide shows all of the sites coming together. So we've got Vistry appointed to build 950 homes. We have Vistry and Catalyst that we're getting into contract to deliver 270 homes. Meridian 3, we've got cabinet permission to take that out to the market for student housing and co-living, either on a permanent basis or on a Meanwhile lease. And Meridian 4 is the next opportunity that we're really keen to talk to people about. We're getting cabinet permission in September to deliver this on a design and build basis. We're looking for 800 homes, 65% build to rent, 35% affordable. The council will be delivering the construction. We're looking for a forward fund arrangement with an investor operator to own and manage the build to rent units upon completion. You can see in the blue line here, we've got outline planning permission for everything in that blue line, 2,300 homes, as well as permission for a school and food and beverage offer. Next slide. This is some more details about Meridian 1, where we start really positively with a good mix of uses and 50% affordable housing, half of which will be council homes. First completions in 2022. Next slide. And this is just a slide showing the 275 homes at Meridian 2, which will be 100% affordable, and there'll be 3,000 square meters on the ground floor of affordable workspace. Next slide. And final slide just shows how this phase 2 planning application will come together over the next few years, and this beautiful Brooks Park will get delivered as part of the Housing Infrastructure Fund work. Thank you. Next slide. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Peter. So there's a huge amount there, and Peter's taken us through it in less than 15 minutes. So I thought it might be helpful just to recap how what I see as the headlines here before we then come to our esteemed panelists and to our Q&A. And please do ask questions in the Q&A chat as well. So there's 10,000 homes, 6,000 jobs, parks, schools, culture, sustainability, and obviously that £156 million from government to enable all the infrastructure works. And you could probably have a separate hour-long presentation on each one of those parts of the scheme, as well as then how it all comes together into one vision for a place. And at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about, a new place for London. So on that note, I'm going to introduce our three additional panelists and ask them to say a little bit more about themselves, their professional background and their connection to Meridian Water. They're all connected to the scheme in different ways, but also how they see this coming together as a place over the next 10 years. Claire Benny joins us. She's founder of Municipal, and before she founded Municipal, she was development director at Peabody for a significant number of years. Al Parra is co-founder of Building Blocks, which Peter mentioned in his presentation, a really important part of Meridian Water and the vision for the place as a whole. And Matthew Taylor joins us from Vistry Partnerships, who are delivering that first phase of new homes, the first of which will be ready in just a couple of years' time, in fact, less than a couple of years' time, I think. So I'm going to come to them each one by one. Claire, we'll start with you, if that's okay.
Great, thanks a lot, Jenna. As Jenna mentions, good morning everybody, by the way. I both practiced architecture at the start of my career and then became a development client at Peabody. And what I do now is to advise local authorities on how to commission good design. I also do design review for a couple of other authorities, Brighton and Kingston. And I additionally advise architects on how to work with the public sector. So I'm basically a translation service between the various parties. My mantra when I go in to help the public sector is that there are 4 levers to achieving good quality. Very crudely, they are culture, standards, procurement, and scrutiny. And you absolutely need all 4 to achieve a good result. So what's my role at Meridian? Scrutiny is my key role at Meridian, and I'm really the sort of honest broker between commercial and design tensions, and there are always those tensions, and actually the sort of joy and the interest is always in resolving the tension between the two. I think what Enfield's doing as a really interesting role here is doing that master developer model, because what that enables is for it to retain a strong scrutiny role during the development, all the way through it, all through its whatever it is, 20, 25, 30 years, and to change and ramp up its goals as the project progresses. Just some really, really quick highlights. I chair a panel of 6 external design review members, bringing their experience, their support, and crucially, a set of fresh eyes. We're working to a 10-point charter, which everyone's signed up to. And really interestingly, one of those points in the charter is SME practices being fully integrated into every design team that comes forward with the developer. So we've actually got 4 architects working on phase 1 alone, which is exciting and really gives some freshness to it. Final highlight, there's lots of focus on landscape. And we talk more, if anything, about landscape in our design review than we do buildings. So it's not just one of those, it's landscape led, it really is, and that's exciting. I'll just finish with 3 quick challenges to it, because it's not always, sunny out there, as it were. This means that Vistry has to sort of report to, as it were, the planning authority, the GLA and us. It's quite burdensome on them, so they really go through that mill when they're working up their scheme. If you're not careful, it can get to be quite legal and policy based. It's got to allow, design review has to allow in sort of messy judgment, if you like, something a bit more subjective. And then there's always that tension in phase 1. Phase 1's got to be fantastic, and it will be. but that's when you don't yet have the place or the values to support it. So that's the additional challenge and tension that comes into design review of phase 1, and I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Al, over to you. Oh, I think you're muted, Al.
Apologies. Hello there. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, everybody, for joining. So I'm one of the co-founders of Building Blocks that Peter kindly introduced earlier. Building Blocks is an open access workshop. We are a workspace provider for professional makers, and what we give access to is workspace and light industrial equipment, and we do that on a really flexible pay-as-you-go basis for people who are either freelance professionals or SMEs working in manufacturing and making. And that can be right across a very wide spectrum of very prosaic making, somebody making a kitchen cabinet, to philosophical stuff, a sculptor. And what brings all of our professional makers together is that they need access to the right equipment, the right space, the right facilities, the right network. And Building Blocks is the platform on which a lot of making businesses are being built and made. We've got people from woodworkers to engineers, metal workers, wedding dressmakers. It's a huge, huge variety of people. We self-seeded at Meridian Water before we even appreciated that Meridian Water was a thing. We arrived and set up our workshops. We then approached the local authority. We didn't even know which authority it was at the time, and we went to find Enfield, and Enfield said, "Goodness me, you're right in the middle of our Meridian Water development zone." And there began a relationship which has been a really, very fruitful. Now we self-seeded in 2012, and we've now developed a relationship which has gone on to deliver a project together with the GLA, a really exciting, innovative development right in the heart of a new town centre for our borough, which brings manufacturing and making into the new development. And kudos really to GLA and specifically Enfield for working with us as a social enterprise to deliver such an exciting project as part of this new development.
Thank you very much, Al. Matthew, do you want to say a few words about Vistry's involvement in the project? Oh, you're muted too, Matt.
You always forget. Matt Taylor, I'm the MD at Vistry Partnerships. A bit about myself: I come from a land and planning background, having previously worked with a couple of the volume house builders, Barratt Homes and Berkeley Homes. Started with Vistry Partnerships just over 4 years ago to kickstart their development programme across London. People may not be familiar with Vistry just as yet. The company was formed as part of the merger at the beginning of the year between Linden Homes, Bovis Homes and Galliford Try Partnerships. So we're not your typical house builder. We're a hybrid of contracting and development. And I think that brings some key benefits to unlocking Meridian. We tend to effectively utilise our contracting expertise to manage risk, control cost on behalf of partners that they may be housing associations, build-to-rent partners, local authorities that we have framework partnerships with more often than not. But at the same time, we maximise development value by utilising the brand development expertise of both Linden Homes and Bovis Homes. So I think it's important to note that a lot of what Vistry does is de-risked, it's forward funded, it's hedged against any potential cycle in the housing market. Typically between 50 and 80% of our schemes would either be delivered as affordable housing or build to rent, with a balance of private sale that is sufficient to deliver a better return for our partners, but is at a level that means we can accelerate delivery without being too private sale rate dependent. That's a key benefit with the partnership with Enfield. It means that with all of the uncertainty that's been in place in the London market over the last few years, and especially now, we can start projects with a degree of confidence that we have exit positions agreed with key parts of the scheme, and we'll keep building to that original programme that we first envisaged. It's quite exciting to think at Meridian, within the next 5 years, potentially we would have already delivered up to 750 of the homes envisaged. A typical house building model would never consider that rate of delivery simply because of private sales rates. It also gives us the flexibility by not having too much homeowner occupation, private sale, to ensure that we focus on the UK domestic market. And especially Enfield, people that live in Enfield, local people, providing affordable housing. Our role at Meridian Water, as Peter said previously, we were selected at the beginning of the year as Enfield's development partner for phase 1. This is building upon the outline planning permission that has previously been secured by Enfield in their role as master developer. We're now working collaboratively with both Enfield Council, the design advisory group that Claire noted she chairs, to work up a reserve matters application that will be submitted later this year. But at the same time, looking at ways in which we can optimise the planning consent for better outcomes for local people. But one of those key outcomes is the commitment to deliver 50% affordable housing. The outline planning permission would have delivered 25%, but the Vistry partnership model and working with housing associations in particular and Enfield now in respect of council housing will be delivering a minimum of 50% affordable housing. The next 5 years, as I say, very exciting. There will be accelerated delivery. We'll be on site very soon. You'll see a lot of activity at Meridian Water. Of those 750 homes, a vast percentage of those will also be affordable housing, kick-starting early delivery of affordable homes for people in Enfield. And it's going to be exciting over the next 5 years, really, to build the identity, the place, recognising the key attributes it has already in terms of the Lee Valley Park, green spaces, local businesses such as building blocks with Al. And as Peter mentioned, and we can speak about later, a key part of what we'll be delivering in that over that 5 year period will be a flagship skills academy that will deliver a number of apprenticeships throughout delivery, a significant amount of social value that I can speak about further later, but also we'll have a legacy from Meridian Water and the wider master plan, and also North London. So yeah, really excited to be part of the team.
Thank you. And you sort of touched on, in your penultimate point there, you touched on the sort of vision for the place as a whole, and we've had a couple of questions on that note as well, so I'll just bring those in now. Leighton Pace asks about the sort of the public realm element of Meridian Water, and how that's going to be delivered, and how you're going to make sure that it's delivered to the quality and level of sustainability that you aspire to. And Claire St. Martin says, how is water going to contribute to placemaking? So if we sort of group those together, and Peter, perhaps you'd like to start and just set that overall vision for Meridian Water as a place. I know that the water and in fact your kind of green spaces and your proximity to Lee Valley Regional Park are all really key there.
Yeah, thank you, Jenna. Thanks for those questions. So, you heard me speak about the 3 placemaking pillars. So park life on your doorstep very much speaks to the fact that we want to extend the beautiful green open expanse of the Lee Valley Regional Park into each and every development site at Meridian Water. And for those unfamiliar with the area, it is one of the real benefits of, one of the real locational benefits of Meridian Water. And we see, you know, the inclusion of a large amount of green open space. As I said, we've got looking to achieve 30%, and water as a key identifier for Meridian Water. We're looking at this as being part of a broader health and wellbeing offer. And it's already clear from the employers we're talking to, they love the fact that, you know, at lunchtime, their workforce are able to step out into the serenity of the Lee Valley Regional Park. In terms of how we're going to be delivering this, it's a different approach for different scales. So the strategic green open spaces, the council will be delivering as part of as what we see strategic infrastructure. So we'll be delivering 2 large parks as part of the Housing Infrastructure Fund work, for which we've already got detailed planning consent secured. We've got a tier 1 contractor going to our board in September. So we will be on site next year delivering the infrastructure, including those 2 new parks. We are working on version 2 of our master plan, which will include, we hope, a green loop going through the centre of the site. That will be partly delivered by the council, but it will also partly be delivered, we hope, by our landowner partners. Then at the kind of site scale, it's the kind of the process that Claire and Matthew have spoken about, where, you know, partners like Vistry will be responsible for delivering really strong landscaping proposals as part of their development. And it's, you know, every single development site where we got a partner, we will have one of these design charters, which Claire and the set of advisors are responsible for working in partnership with partners like Vistry to make sure that the charter is implemented. That charter will always have very clear targets with regard to green open space. And then finally, in terms of the water, we are a few exciting things to say here. As part of the Housing Infrastructure Fund work, we are naturalising the brooks, so that will form part of the park. So we're doing a lot of work around how we can clean up the brooks so that that can actually be a play opportunity. We're also getting authority, and we're having great conversations with Thames Water about opening up the Banbury Reservoir for leisure purposes, whether it's sailing or swimming. And we're also talking to Canals and River Trust about using the River Lee as a rowing opportunity. So water and green open space integral to the whole development.
Thank you. And actually, we've had a question about the charter, so I think this would be a good time to, Claire, Emma wants to know what's the process for developing the charter. And clearly, you'll have to make sure that all the partners are signed up to it, but also that it's ambitious enough to actually really make a difference.
That's true. There's quite a lot of work that Enfield did leading up to the charters on each phase, actually. As part of the outline planning consent, Enfield put in place, or its consultants rather, put in place a place brief, which is a very high level, the place must be like this. And then also some design coding, which goes into quite a lot of detail about a number of aspects, including sort of the quality of materials and so forth, and the fact that the materials have to be of a local character, some, you know, trying to get some of them to be recycled, etc. So when the developers come in, they've already made some hard commitments around how they're going to meet all of those design code and place brief. So really the 10-point charter, what we were anxious not to do is for the design advisory group that I chair to sort of open everything back up, because a lot of legal stuff has already been sorted. So what the design charter aims to do is to distill that place brief and design code down to the top 10 points, which really add value and add place and are about local residents and how it connects through. So it's a distillation of work that Enfield's already done. And Peter can probably say slightly more about how the place brief and design code evolved. I just want to say one more thing, going back to the previous one on how are we going to make sure the public realm is brilliant. Peter's kind of answered that really well. I suppose what I'd say is on my group, I've got some totally landscape focused people there, including Dan Ray at Periscope. And, you know, as I mentioned before, so much of the design review discussion is about the public realm and the real detail of the public realm. So, you know, Vistry's got, and I would say on the other side, Vistry's consultant team is excellent, and it is, you know, it's not like some consultant teams you find where there almost isn't a landscape architect. I see that so often on big schemes. You know, the landscape architects are almost sort of front and center of this scheme. So from both sides of the sort of client developer fence, there is quality there. But Peter, I don't know if you want to talk about how you evolved your place brief and design code very briefly.
Yeah, just at a high level, how we look at quality of design is to have a really strong planning position and a really strong contractual position. So, for example, our planning strategy is to take sites to the market once we've firstly secured a outline planning consent, which has a design code attached to it. So that's what we did on the first phase. That's what we're doing on the subsequent phases. So firstly, there's a really strong planning position. Then in the contractual position, we have a place brief, and what the place brief is there to do is to focus in on that particular site. Because take phase 2, you know, there will be about 6 development opportunities within that outline. So it focuses in on the particular nature of that site within the OPA, but it's more high level and strategic than the design code, which goes into quite a lot of detail. And we've organised the place brief under the headings of those 3 placemaking pillars. So it provides more detail and explains to our partners how we want them to interpret Park Life on Your Doorstep, mixing uses animation streets, and Your Place to Make and Create. And then arising from that, we then have the design charter, which is jointly agreed between ourselves and the partner. And the council has to sign off the application before it's submitted to the LPA, and we sign it off on the basis that it accords with the pre-agreed design charter.
What I should probably say just very, very quickly is that the very first item on the design charter top 10 is to ensure that the place is inclusive and welcoming to the existing community. So the design advisory group almost has that as their top charter item.
Thank you, that's really helpful, because that's actually a good link to a next question from, I believe, an old friend of the project, John Baker, who wants to understand, sorry, distracting children in the background, who wants to understand how the council is approaching sort of doing that mapping, I suppose, community mapping work, identifying the socio-economic needs of the community to inform the project. So I don't know, Peter, perhaps as the sort of council's lead on this, if you could say a few words about that.
Perhaps I'll start, and then it would be good perhaps for Matt to talk a little bit about the work that they're just about to undertake around consulting the community in preparation for that, for those 2 planning applications. So thanks for the question, John. So as I said, the 2 of our top priorities are local people being the principal beneficiaries, and we define local people as being those residents who fall within the 3 Edmonton wards, and associated objective is to take those wards out of the top 10% most deprived. The piece of work that we are just undertaking now is what we're calling the Edmonton Household Survey. So in order to evaluate whether we've achieved 10% lifting the wards out the top 10% most deprived, what we don't want to do is what other, you see in other regen projects, is to kind of take a high level view of socioeconomic indicators today deliver a lot of development. House prices go up, and you get a lot of gentrification. You get a lot of people moving into the area, and those people have more money. They then reevaluate the socioeconomic indicators and then pat themselves on the back and go, what a marvellous job we've done. Now, that isn't actually making any difference for the lives of local people. So what we are going to be doing is undertaking a survey this autumn of people in the local wards, understanding, in the context of the indices of multiple deprivation, understanding their life and their priorities, and we'll be measuring our success against the extent to which we're able to make a difference to the lives of local people. You know, the extent to which we're able to improve their housing situations, the extent to which we're able to get local people trained up in either the construction industry or in the film industry, the extent to which local people are benefiting from the new health and wellbeing centre that Vistry will be delivering. You know, across a number of areas, that's how we're going to be ensuring that we're taking account of the needs of local people, in addition to all the work we're doing around kind of community engagement.
Matthew, do you want to then say a few words about what Vistry is going to be delivering on the ground over the next few years?
Yeah, because I think whilst there is a master plan and an outline planning permission in respect of phase 1, and there may be a reserved matters application, but it's important to keep that consultation going with stakeholders and the local community, especially that we are looking at ways in which to optimise that outline planning permission for better social outcomes. And there are going to be a vast array of opportunities for local people to have input into some of the fledgling ideas that we have and commitments that we've already made to Enfield. And yeah, as Peter said, we're just about to commence writing to local community groups and stakeholders to kickstart that process of consultation. Now, building upon an awful lot that Enfield themselves as master developer have previously carried out. That's working closely with a company called Cascade, and it will be sitting down with local businesses, colleges, community groups and stakeholders to listen. And I think whilst Meridian Water has been spoken about for an awful long time, I do think that there is always going to be an education piece to really fill people in on what is going to be delivered and when and what the commitments are. And I think that certainly from our perspective, the commitment to increase the level of affordable housing and what that's going to mean for local people is something that we want to engage and talk through. The Skills Academy, like I said earlier, is something that we see as a bit of a flagship skills academy for Vistry. It's going to go beyond your typical construction skills apprenticeships and touch upon everything that we do in development, all disciplines, and be there not just to support Meridian 1, but the wider Meridian Water Master Plan. And I think that engagement and consultation with local groups and people is going to be important to identify skills gaps, needs, and talk the local community through the benefits that it will bring. Equally, there are other commitments that we've made in terms of a community garden at Meridian 1 that will be delivered closely working in partnership with the local school, and it will be seeking to bring, I suppose, health benefits and social value benefits to the local community. So I think there's a lot outside of the reserved matters application that we need to consult with, table to the local community and garner opinion and thought. And there is an opportunity to shape those things with the feedback from the community.
I wonder if I could bring Alan now, just to sort of comment on everything you've heard about sort of links to local community as the organisation that's already there and on the ground, how is that relationship now, and how kind of linked up do you feel as building blocks and as part of Meridian Water to the wider sort of Edmonton community, and actually how do you see that evolving over the next few years?
Yeah, the amazing thing about blocks is seeing people building their own businesses and building their own livelihoods, and that as an opportunity right in the heart of Edmonton. What we're doing together with the GLA and Enfield, and our original vision is to build the largest open access. We're already the largest open access workshop in London. We're going to be the largest open access workshop in all of Europe, and to have such a European first right in the heart of this community is really, really, an amazing opportunity. And being part of the development, seeing the infrastructure to develop, being able to cross the boundaries and the geographical boundaries that we have already, the road, the North Circular, the river, and being interconnected now with making those flows to our communities much better is something that we are really excited about. It's going to make such a huge difference as we open onto the waterfront as well. We're going to be able to open our doors even wider and welcome more members of the local community in. And it's a really, really important part of our ethos that we're empowering people by giving them this platform. And I'm really looking forward to how we can work together with Vistry more in order to increase the skills development which we can offer to local residents.
I was just going to add to what I was saying previously. A part of the engagement, not just in respect to the scheme itself, but what delivery will bring in terms of social value benefits to businesses in Enfield. So again, similarly with the initial consultation, we'll be embarking on a series of Meet the Buyer events, procurement masterclasses, setting out what construction contracts are going to be there to tender for, supporting local businesses and assisting them in tendering for some of these construction contracts to benefit from the delivery at Meridian. The KPI kind of requirements is going to be in excess of 20% of labour coming from the local area, in excess of 10% local procurement from businesses within Enfield, and these are sizable contracts. But we realise that we do need to engage with local businesses and support them in tendering for some of these works, because that they may feel out of reach on occasion. But we will be, like I say, holding a series of Meet the Buyer procurement masterclasses over the coming weeks and months.
Thank you. And just conscious of time, but I think that's a good link to sort of a next topic, because we've had a couple of questions about how firms and organisations can get involved and what procurement opportunities there might be. But I wondered if we could just broaden that out a little bit, just to spend a few minutes thinking also about the sort of meanwhile opportunities. Obviously, on a scheme of this scale and its longevity, there will be some short and medium term opportunities. And I know that part of the vision is to ensure that those shorter and medium term opportunities can evolve with the scheme, a bit like building blocks has, I suppose. And so, Peter, I wonder if you want to sort of take that to start with, but then I'll invite the other panelists to comment too.
Yeah, sure. So firstly, what's the purpose of Meanwhile at Meridian Water? So, over the course of the next 25 years, we're clearly not going to be looking to deliver permanent development across the whole site in a single phase. It's going to be phased logically, as you would expect. The site, as you saw in the earlier photograph, is currently predominantly kind of industrial and big box retail. It's not currently an obvious location for, a really high quality residential led development. So the purpose of the Meanwhile uses is to make a serious contribution to placemaking in the area. It's there to change perceptions, raise the profile of Meridian Water, and introduce Meridian Water into the consciousness of Londoners. And, you know, the Drum Sheds has done an incredible job of that. You know, we've had over 100,000 people at Field Day Music Festival and other music events there during the course of last year. Incredible press on the back of the drive-in cinema. But we're working on a meanwhile master plan which will set out plans for new meanwhile opportunities. We are currently looking into the opportunity to also have some meanwhile co-living housing and potentially a meanwhile hotel. Vistry will be delivering some meanwhile projects on their site. In terms of kind of how local businesses can get involved, we will be doing to kind of meet the buyer type events and organising it within the local community. But perhaps it would be good for, you know, you might not want to work at Meridian Water. It might be good for Al to explain why you do want to work at Meridian Water and what it's like to work with Enfield as a partner.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Peter. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, our experience of working together with Enfield as a partner has been a really interesting road. It's been a process of, I remember a very specific meeting of my colleagues when we were talking amongst ourselves, and somebody said, look, we're not dealing with a vast corporate body. We're dealing with people here. And we developed relationships together with the Enfield regeneration team, specifically with Peter and Peter's team, which have actually built a relationship which has meant that we've developed a level of trust which has been what has helped us through some extremely difficult waters to navigate and some difficult hurdles to get over. And so that has been a really interesting part of how we've worked together, and I think we're helping write a method for how that can be done, how third sector delivery partners like ourselves can be integrated into this kind of development. So that's really good. Yeah, we are a space for people to build making businesses, and it's really important that we develop relationships with local people, and Edmonton and specifically, but Enfield more widely. But we are somewhere where you can come as a maker to build your business, get going, and the infrastructure, the connections, the brand new Meridian Water station, those things are going to make it, a brilliant place for people to come from a much wider catchment area. That's also extremely important for us at Blocks.
Thank you. I'm just really conscious we've got about 6 minutes left, and there's a lovely question here that I thought would be nice to end on, which is from David Taylor, I assume editor of New London Quarterly, David Taylor, who asks, what examples are there from around the world that you have in mind for Meridian Water? What do you hope it will feel like? So I wonder, maybe we could just each take it in turns to share that vision, and if there are any kind of international benchmark examples that you have in your head, or in fact whether you feel that actually it's going to be quite pioneering and nothing does quite compare. Claire, do you want to I'm going to put you on the spot and you can go first.
Sure. I mean, the really cliche, obvious one in my head, because it involves a lot of water, is Hammarby in Stockholm. I think what picks Meridian Water out from probably most other regen schemes around is the element of water and landscape. The other one I think of, which is closer to home, is actually Thamesmead, which I know a little bit about. That's the other place in London which has just got substantial water, and where water is the life of the place. And that's the starting point. So those are the ones I think of. Thamesmead's kind of obviously very early on its journey. Hammarby is a really beautiful place where I've visited twice now, and it's completely bedded in, and the landscape is very much at the centre of it.
Lovely images for us to go and Google and have a look at after this. Matthew, how about you?
I think I'll swerve the international comparison, but I would say, I mean, there's some strong parallels even with Woodbury Down, a Berkeley scheme on more or less on the doorstep of Meridian. But there are also some pitfalls there. I think we take some learnings from the quality of architecture, the public realm that's being delivered. But I think Meridian is going to be a more inclusive place and a place for the people of Enfield in particular. But the lessons of including landscape and bringing water into the scheme that are successfully achieved at Woodbury Down, I think to some extent will be mirrored at Meridian. But alongside it, this is not about housing. This is about employment, job creation, and the wider social value that the regeneration of this area is going to bring. So.
That's really important. Al, how about you? What's in your mind as your kind of overall ambition?
I'm not necessarily, well, for our part of what we bring to Meridian Water and what we are, we take inspiration a great deal from there aren't actually any analogues to what we're doing, so we take inspiration from other platforms that basically bring together disciplines from lots and lots of different disciplines, and then break down the barriers between them so that innovation is possible. And innovation and invention is really, really important to the ethos of Blocks, and it's part of why we are here. And the fact that we can be innovative and grow in the middle of this innovative project is really exciting. So, yeah, inspiration for innovation and invention is what is where we bring, or where we take inspiration.
Thank you. And Peter, it's only fitting that you should have the final word before we draw to a close. What's your grand ambition, your grand vision for Meridian Water?
Well, thank you, Jenna. So I just think on the point about the international perspective, I'm really proud to lead an incredibly diverse team. So the in-house team at Meridian Water, so there's about 30 dedicated professionals, and we do have people from all around the world. It's kind of 50% BAME, also about 50% man to female. So it's a really good mixed, diverse team. We've also got a architectural practice called KS as part of our master planning team, who are Swedish. So we have that perspective as well. In terms of the one international development that comes to mind, particularly from the kind of park life on your doorstep perspective, is born in Freiburg, Germany, which I think we can learn a lot from. But I think the final point I'd like to make is, we take an incredible lot of inspiration from actually just listening to what local people want. So it's important to do all of the kind of benchmarking work, but if you're going to fulfill the promise that local people are the principal beneficiaries, you need to have a very clear idea as what is going to make a difference to local people.
Thank you, and I think that message has come through really loud and clear today, that this is, it's a major project on a grand scale, but actually it's very much focused on local people, and that presumably is because we've got Enfield Council as a local authority at the helm, and I think that's very exciting for everybody. Thank you all for joining us today, all of our speakers and panelists, but also all of you as participants, and especially to those who asked questions, and I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. This will be hosted online as a recording, but you can also obviously please do contact the team if you've got further questions, and I'm sure they'd all love to hear from you if you want to know more about Meridian Water. But thank you all again, and have good days.